Serious, what is the most terrifying thing to happen to you in a well-lit and populated place? When I was 12 years old, I was beaten up in a crowded bus station at rush hour by a boy several years older than me for absolutely no reason whatsoever. It was a completely unprovoked attack and I was trapped against a one-way door. The adults standing around waiting for their buses to go home from work did absolutely nothing to help me or to stop me from being attacked. An addict wanted money from me downtown. But I literally had nothing but my clothes on me. So I said, "Sorry man." All out. Dude lumbers towards me slowly, pushes me over, and stabbed me in the thigh with a Swiss Army knife. I booked it to the hospital for stitches. Didn't hurt until I actually looked at it. Adrenaline didn't stop pumping for a very long time. Edit. Lot of people asking why didn't you run if he was lumbering towards you? I was 13. He was a full-grown adult. I had a bad haircut. He pulled a knife on me. I froze in fear. A few years ago I was at a bowling center on a busy day. When we were about to leave we heard a big bang. A man had thrown the heaviest bowling ball on a woman's head. Later I read that he did it on purpose and the women had severe brain damage. And was lucky to be alive. The man got sentenced to 18 months in prison. Edit. Someone noted to me that I forgot forced psychological evaluation and the 7.5k reimbursement he had to pay. A guy felt me up on an extremely crowded, peak hour, bus. I totally froze. Couldn't bring myself to move a muscle as his hand slid up the bare skin of my inner thigh. I was wearing a skirt. It was an odd experience. I never expected myself to react like that. I always imagined that if something like that happened I'd shove them off or call them out or something. But I didn't. I didn't do anything. My dog and I are stopped at a crosswalk and he barks and scares this woman. As soon as he barked the walk dude came up to cross but the lady started yelling about my needing to control my dog and she pulled out a taser. I'm just trying to get across the street and she starts making even a bigger scene saying how she's going to shock me. My dog is barking at the crazy lady. We are standing in the street now. At a busy intersection and I thought to myself I'm about to get tased in front of all these people. I'm not sure it was the most terrifying thing that happened to me. But it was the most terrifying thing that happened to me at that point in my life. I was about 11. In Cape Town, South Africa. Visiting family. My parents were walking in front of me. And I was walking with my little cousin directly behind them. We were in a shopping mall, Tyger Valley Center for any South Africans out there. Anyway. I think my parents had stopped to get some money out of an ATM. And my cousin were just being silly. As you do at that age. This guy, maybe in his mid-20s, sat across from us on a bench. Pointed at us. Then my parents. And then dragged his finger along his neck. He then pulled open his jacket. And pulled a gum out of a pocket. I don't know if that was a real gum. And I didn't care to find out. I told my parents immediately. And we kind of circulated the security personnel before eventually leaving. Was a bit of an uncomfortable situation. Fistula rupture of a patient in my hospital. Blood everywhere. Blood on the floor. Ceiling. Workers. And everywhere else you can imagine. Splurging everywhere. Doctors and nurses worked on her for 45 minutes. But nothing they could do to save her. It looked like someone had been slashed open with a sword in the room. And the worst part is that her 3 kids were there to see it. Almost drowned as a 6-year-old in a populated adult pool. I was floundering for what felt like a minute. Quickly losing breath and swallowing water. No one around me heard my gurgled cries. No one helped. Thank God my mother pulled me out before it was too late. And that's how I developed my fear of water. The worst part about drowning is that untrained people have no idea what it looks like. Yeah. Drowning is surprisingly quiet. When you're drowning it's very hard to wave your hands or call for help as all your body and instincts are going into keeping upright and trying to keep your head at the surface. It's why kids can drown within a few meters of their parents without anyone noticing it. It just doesn't look like in the movies. I was working a construction job a while back and I was told to wait on the ground floor for someone. I bent down to retrieve my boots and a pallet full of mixing cement comes crashing down where I was just standing. I clearly remember the foreman saying I would have been stone cold dead if my shoes were tied. Broad daylight. Nobody reported the accident. OSHA was different back then. If anyone has seen the movie Grand Canyon, you'll know how I felt. Many years ago, I was just about to walk into the restaurant where I was the assistant manager, when I was approached by this huge guy who was all smiles and generally gave across this body language of being friendly. Is it sorry but I need to ask you something kinda way. Next thing I knew, he was screaming at me about some friend I hadn't seen in a while. Turns out my friend had stolen some weed off this dodgy guy. And my name had come up for some reason. Right there in the middle of a busy road in a busy city. He pulled out a Stanley knife and told me he was going to cut my throat with it if I didn't give him his 350 pounds right there. I still don't remember exactly what I said to him but he left. Told me he was going to kill me if he ever saw me again and I went into work. I was 10 or maybe 12 years old. My mom took me to the mall so she could go to the Target. There was a baseball card comic book store right next to the Target and while she shopped I got to go look at the collectibles. While I was looking at the cards in the case, a guy came in. He looked around for a minute, then approached me and asked if I liked baseball cards. I said that I didn't. He said he had a Babe Ruth card in his van and asked if I would like to see it. We were right at the counter and the clerk was right there. But I got a real creepy vibe from this guy. I said no and left the store to go back to Target and find my mom. I looked behind me as I walked into Target and, sure enough, he was following me. I was starting to get a little scared. So I turned into the women's underwear aisle, thinking he wouldn't follow me. He kept after me until I finally found my mom. I never told her about it because I didn't want to scare her. At the time I thought maybe he wanted to steal my $10 but now I'm pretty sure he wanted more than $10. TL. Dr. Creepster tried to get me in the mall. 16. Female fresh out from school for the day. Take bus home and am standing next to a kid who felt like wearing all red. Car pulls up and a guy in the backseat has a handgun. Points it at the kid in the red but I knew more or less everyone at the bus stop was going to get shot because some dumbass wanted to wear gang affiliated colors. Light turns green and the driver goes and I'm left reeling with the whole what if scenarios for a few days. I guess this qualifies. Thunderstorm downdraft on a fully laden plane. Your seat belt is done up, but there's fresh air between your butt and the seat as the plane drops. Recently went to Dolphin Cove to take care of my #1 bucket list item. Swim with sharks. I went with my best friend. Her and I are in our 40s and cute enough in our own right. Our shark trainer flirted with us but we thought nothing of it. Once we were in the water, we had to sit on a bench. He maneuvered the shark on our lap. Part of the program was the trainer guiding our hands to feel the shark. He put both of our hands on his very erect pen 15. We again kind of blew it off thinking it was an accident. Then he told us to spread our legs so we could hold and balance the shark on our legs. He slid his hand up our thighs and got his fingers under both of our bottoms before we stopped him. We both felt violated and it ruined my very top bucket list item experience for me. It horrifies and frightens me to think of how often he's done that with other women and kids. A couple of years ago I was jogging in the center of my town as usual, when I realized I was being followed by some guy I had never seen. He kept trying to talk to me, and at some point he grabbed me from behind and went full molester on me. I shook free then started screaming, knocking on the hood of a car passing by. He ran away, never to be found. I couldn't jog for over a year. Edit to @ obligatory rip my inbox. Also thanks for the encouraging replies. I resumed jogging after a year or so by the way. Would also like to remind everyone in a situation of possible assault to run away. Make a lot of noise. Run towards houses, people, cars so you can get someone's attention and be helped. Scream fire. If need be. People may ignore calls for help but usually respond in case of fire. And lastly, report the incident to the authorities. Was taking my kids for a walk in the park near our apartment once when a guy and a woman came out of the tree line suddenly, and the guy said to give him my wallet and anything else in my pockets. He had some weird screwdriver knife thing, and I pushed my daughter, my eldest child, behind me. I was going to do the same for my son, but the woman grabbed his other arm for some reason and my heart felt like it was going to explode for some reason. I suddenly forgot about self-preservation and jumped forwards and broke the woman's nose. I felt a sharp pain under my ribs and looked to see that the man had just shanked me. But at this point 2 other guys who had been jogging were running up and shouting. The police that patrolled the park showed up not long after that. I was sitting and trying not to bleed to death. The man had ran off and his screwdriver was still in me. The woman was on the ground crying and shouting because I had also knocked the top front of her teeth loose out. The 2 joggers were originally asking the woman if I was the assaulter, but the situation cleared up soon. I got taken to the hospital and questioned about the incident. There was a while when it looked like I was going to be charged with battery for the woman, since it turns out she actually had a decently well-off family. Was just an addict. They tried to sue me but it was thrown out and she was sentenced for attempted kidnapping. I had a tube in my chest for 2 weeks after my surgery to remove the shank. But it all cleared up after that. Just glad my kids are safe. Edit, I am male. Sorry for not clarifying. The mother of my children passed away several years ago. The hospital. Called 911 because my mom had a seizure. At hospital in the ridiculous bright light and the DR comes in and says they found a brain tumor. Texted my sister immediately and then moments later I could hear her sobbing in the waiting area from where I was. The beginning of the end. As an internet stranger to another. My condolences. Was your mum able to get surgery? She had the tumor removed and we were able to enjoy 3 more years with her before she passed from the brain cancer 2 years ago this week. Thankful for the additional years of good days with her. I'm a little late to this party but here goes. I was on a 300-mile ride on my motorcycle when I stopped for gas at a sketchy gas station. While I stopped, this homeless guy in a puffy ratty fur jacket and a Flavor Flav style Viking hat rides up on his bicycle with a milk crate for a basket and a homemade trailer. He rings a bell on his handlebar and tells me I have a nice bike as I'm walking in to pay. I say thanks you too bud, and he charges at me on foot and pushes me from behind hard and says no man, I said you have an EIEIEICEEBIEIEIEIEIP. I'm freaking out now cause this dude looks high as hell on something hard, and though I'm not a small dude, I've heard Drew Gus make ya fight hella crazy. So I push this guy to the ground and yell for him to BTFU, and he gets up, adjusts his hat and says this is what you wear when you wanna sing Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. Ararara. Then he runs to his bike like a madman and rides off. Most terrifying and hilarious thing to ever happen to me. TLDR, cranked out homeless dude attacked me in a parking lot. May have been Robert Plant. When I was really young, a guy stopped me when I was leaving school and asked if I liked PlayStation and Nintendo. I told him I did. And that I really liked Final Fantasy, and he said what a coincidence. I have that with a TV in my van. Wanna come play? I told him I had to ask my mom first. And to stay here. I ran home and called my mom to ask. And she told me to lock the door. Get in the basement. And don't open the door for anyone. She explained what was happening to me when she got home, and once I knew, I was pretty freaked out. I'm a 20-something lady. I was heading home from the gym, tired, dressed elegantly, on my way from work, along a large, well-lit street, about a block from my house. A man first tried to catch my attention and then to grab me and pull towards the bushes on one side of the sidewalk. Having already partly removed his pants, I screamed bloody murder and ran home. After calling the police and describing the attacker, they asked what I was wearing. I was going to get mad, but it turned out he matched the description of a local pedophile suspect that preys on young girls from the nearby school. I was wearing a rather girly navy blue skirt with a white shirt that day. He was never arrested. I was 18 or 19 and picking up a prescription at the pharmacy. While I was waiting in line, a man, who I guess was waiting in line as well, started taking pictures of my feet with his cell phone. He wasn't even trying to be subtle. Just kind of bent over and aimed his phone at my feet. I moved a few feet away and he just followed me. The pharmacist saw the whole thing and mouthed, "Do you know him?" I shook my head with my eyes wide, grabbed my prescription and bolted away from the counter. I hid in the store until I saw him leave and drive off because I was afraid he might follow me. Maybe not terrifying, but definitely unnerving and creepy. Still creeps me out thinking about it. A guy tried to drag me to his room when I was sick and confused at a con. Pulled me right through the lobby. The only reason I didn't end up in his room is because I couldn't think of how to get away. So I just sat right down in the middle of the lobby and he couldn't pick me back up again. No one helped. My friends came back from pulling the car around and found me sitting there. Thankfully they helped me into the car and that was that. One morning I was sitting in a cafe, waiting for a friend. At the table next to me, there was a Chinese exchange student, who obviously just came to the city and didn't speak our language. Some guy walked up to her, sat next to her, groped her and said very nasty sexual things. I said, "Hey, that's not cool. I don't think that you are welcome in this place anymore. Get out of here." Then he got to me, tried to shove me and said, "What do you want from me? Let's get out. I will beat you up. You asshole." It got a bit louder but finally he went out. Thing is, the cafe was half full. It was 10 AM and no one cared what happened to that girl or me. And no one even thought of calling the police. Pretty shitty of these people. Was in Chicago last year for a conference and brought my friend who was slightly terrified of urban areas. Keep in mind, we are from rural Iowa. Had to use the subway to get to the conference when suddenly a fight broke out in the car in front of us. They moved the fight throughout most of the train and started to flash gums at one point in our car. Luckily for us, a brave young fellow helped break it up and no one was seriously injured. But my friend legitimately thought there was about to be a shooting. Walking back from lunch to my office. I work in a urban area but it usually is safe to walk. From the corner of my eye I thought I saw someone following me. Didn't think too much about it but picked up my pace a little. I had to stop at the crosswalk and the person behind me catches up and I feel something on my back and he tells me to make a left turn. I turn into the next street and he asks me for all the money in my wallet. I gave it to him and he bolted past me. It had to be no later than 1 PM and I got mugged right in broad daylight.